Hello, and welcome to the Living Well with Lauren podcast. I'm your host, Lauren. I truly hope the stories, reflections, and information I share on this podcast are a source of inspiration on your journey to cultivate the life you were meant to live. Thank you for joining me as we kick off the first season and the first episode. Today we'll be discussing the stories we tell ourselves, why most of them are wrong, where they came from, and how to unpack them and get back to our true selves so we can live out our soul's purpose here on earth. Before we get into our topic for today, I want to share a little bit about myself and Season 1 episodes coming soon. Some of you probably know me as Living Well Mama, which was my original social media handle. I have been sharing clean ingredient recipes and holistic health tips for over 3 years now. Many of us came into the holistic health space after experiencing illness that we were surprised to learn wasn't getting better regardless of medical treatment, searching for answers, sometimes for years, and finally finding our way. It wasn't until 20 years later, 2 significant mold exposures, and finally leaving a high-stress career in nonprofit that my 15-year passion for wellness, holistic health, and clean ingredient ancestral cooking became my mission. Today, we'll talk about the 5 daily rhythms that keep us healthy, grounded, and present so we can live an intentional, joyous life of vitality. Today, we'll talk about the 5 daily rhythms that keep us healthy, grounded, and present so we can live an intentional, joyous life of vitality. I plan to do a mini episode on each of those. Additionally, more content is coming soon about my ancestral eating plan and why it's easier, healthier, and more cost-effective than people think. One last thing I want to mention before we get into our topic for today is a disclaimer that all of the information I share on this podcast is for informational purposes only and solely my opinion. It is not medical advice or advice of any kind. Now that is out of the way, let's dive in. Experts in the field of child development say we all develop a sense of self around the age of 3 years old. This is when we look ourselves in the mirror and realize, hey, that person is me. I would argue that happens much sooner. But regardless, that sense of self gets inundated with information from the time we are very young. What we see and experience shapes the way we see the world and how we respond to it. Epidemiologists believe some of that starts in the womb, even carrying ancestral trauma and experiences into this life. Others believe we carry past life trauma and karma with us into this life as well. The stories we tell ourselves are what we think about that thing. This could be a traumatic event or simply how we see ourselves in the world, the workplace, our role with friends and family, our goals and aspirations. How does your inner voice feel about what you are doing or not doing in this life? Sometimes it takes a traumatic event to push us out of our comfort zone and be able to answer these questions and get back to the life we were meant to live. It's important to reflect on if the stories we tell ourselves are actually helping us along our path or holding us back in some way. As a child, we ask ourselves, who am I? Who do I want to be? And further, as an adult, what aspirations, if any, do I have that I haven't acted on? Why not? Am I happy? If so, in what areas? And why? It is only with lessons that we find our greatest successes and joy. Adaptability can be challenging and can cause a lot of grief, and or sometimes we don't even fully understand the reason behind it. Let me give you an example. As a millennial, I grew up in a time where career aspirations and education were seen as essential for future growth and opportunities. And in doing so, alongside a great deal of hard work, I was taught that I would be rewarded with enough money to live at ease, buy a home, save a responsible retirement. But all many of us are left with is a great deal of burnout to work through and student loan debt. So at what point do we adapt and accept that you aren't a failure, but instead the world system and what it has to offer has changed? My point in sharing this isn't to say it cannot be obtained or to get into a generational debate about what hard work looks like. I'm simply making the point that hanging on to a goal that may or may not be obtainable, even may not be your own, but instead someone else's that has been ingrained in you, is just pulling your energy away from where it is meant to go, where you want it to, or draining you, so you are no longer in touch with the things that bring you joy in this life. This discussion also isn't intended for anyone to just go and quit their job. But ask yourself the questions. Does that job bring you joy? Did you really want to be a nurse, a police officer, an accountant? Or is it something that you believed you needed to do or to achieve, or something you were expected to do? And why? So you see, this is just one example. You really want to be a content creator, a dancer, a baker, an artist, but you're afraid your friends will judge you. You name it. If you have a calling to try, do, or share something, why aren't you doing it? Or why did you stop doing that thing that brought you joy, even if it was just something small you did outside of work? What do you want to spend your precious time doing? Everyone is here to share their own unique story and creativity with the world. Maybe your story or message isn't meant for everyone, but it is meant for someone. And what would happen to that someone if they didn't get the message? So, what stories are you telling yourself that are holding you back? Is it judgment, lack of confidence? This is a good question to work through. If you've never done shadow work or used a shadow work journal, this is a beautiful way to work through areas in your life that are holding you back. Something truly transformational for me has been the understanding that we come to Earth to learn lessons, and not all of the lessons are ones we have control over. Trauma can be a big obstacle. Working through grief and shame make it very difficult to have the confidence to take any big step, whether it be career, relationship change, a move. Sharing stories and lessons will ultimately help others. When we truly understand and accept that some of those experiences were meant to happen, a soul agreement, something we agreed to go through before this life, it makes it easier to move through those lessons. And having the opportunity to learn from the hard stuff is where we can find joy. I'm not saying it is easy at all. These are the hard ones. Shadow work helps us identify our stories, whether or not they are true, where they came from, and what you believe your soul story actually is, and what you want to accomplish and share in this life are good starting points. We are not seeking perfection, but little actions or moves that add up and start to bring joy into our lives. And joy, I believe, helps us be more intentional. It's easy to get stuck in the monotony of it all or fall into a negative mindset. If you are there, I genuinely see you, and I know everyone has been there. I believe this happens after some of the hardest time periods or experiences in our lives, and we are meant to learn and dig our way out. In addition to doing shadow work, the following practices help our mind, body, and soul communicate and stay grounded and present, so we can listen to our intuition. Many people talk about the things I'm about to mention, but I do think they are essential and the root of a joyous life. I also think my take on the practices are a little different than others. I'm going to include an attachment in the show notes in case you want to print it out, put it on your wall, mirror, fridge, in your car. I am not a fan of the word routine because I think being in our bodies is important, and intuitively you can decide what you need in the moment, the day, or season. But over the last 10 to 12 years of utilizing these as needed, I believe they are foundational, and I always go back to them when I am mentally, physically, or spiritually struggling. I'll probably do an episode on each of these or bring in an expert to discuss them further. The first one is sunlight. First thing in the morning and when the sun is setting. I also find that it's helpful to get some sunlight midday as well, whether it's just going outside for 5 minutes or for 30 minutes to an hour if you can. This helps to make sure our circadian rhythm is functioning properly and helps us sleep better at night. It helps with our mitochondrial production. And really, honestly, if you try to get out into the sunlight first thing in the morning and you do this consistently for a couple weeks, you will immediately notice a difference. I also make sure that I'm having mineral water at the same time. So I just grab my glass of water, put a little bit of good quality sea salt in there, and I immediately go outside and get some sun first thing in the morning. It doesn't have to be a long time. It could just be 5 minutes, long enough to get your water. The third habit includes grounding or earthing. So I just do it barefoot. So if you have access to dirt, grass, sand, whatever it may be, then just go outside barefoot with your mineral water and get a little bit of sun in your face first thing in the morning. Those are 3 out of the 5 you can do all at once in the first 5 minutes of your day. Makes a substantial difference in your mood. Along with the grounding, also I just put nature in general, being outside, nature walks. If you're very stressed out, sounds crazy, but I guarantee you, if you literally touch a tree or lean up against a huge rock, it will immediately bring you back into your body. And it is such a game changer. I think it's underrated. We really have everything on earth that we need to live a healthy life. You know, one would think that we need all these biohacks and all these supplements and all this other stuff that were being sold, and some of them are great and needed from time to time, of course, but really the earth gives us everything we need on a day-to-day basis. So I said sunlight, I said minerals. Along with minerals, we'll go into more details on this in another episode, but there's different mineral powders you can put in your water now. Some of them are better for you than others. Really, you can just put the pinch of sea salt in the water. And then if you're worried about having mineral deficiencies, I can talk more about hair and mineral testing and what I did to look at mine in another episode. We talked about nature walks and grounding. The last 2 are clean ancestral eating as much as possible. Like I said before, most of my social media up until this point, like for the last 3 years or so, has been posting clean ingredient recipes and cooking. So check that out if you're interested in that. I do plan to add some more printable content around my go-to grocery lists and ingredient prep tips soon. You can eat this way for less money than going to the store and buying processed food. People always say they can't eat the way that I do because of the cost, but I'm telling you, it is less expensive. And then lastly is fascia and lymph flow. This is becoming more and more popular. It's kind of like a buzzword on social media. But truly understanding fascia and what it does in our body, and how it affects everything in our body, including our spiritual awareness. It controls our nervous system. Also, it's connected to our lymph. Really, I believe it's the core of how our body functions and communicates with us, all the way down to a spiritual level. So finding some kind of a fascial or lymph practice to incorporate every day, just small as jumping, making sure you're being active, you're walking. And if you're having struggles with lymph, then in the episode that we do about that, we'll get into more details about some specific practices you can do around that to help. And so with that, this is the end of the first episode of the Living Well with Lauren podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and you come back for the second episode, which will be coming soon. Also, check out the attachment with my list of 5 daily practices to add to your life to stay present and grounded. And until next time, I hope you have a joyous day.